Hello everyone and welcome to the FinTech Times. My name's Tyler and today I'm joined by Derren at Pay360. Derren, how are you?
Really good to see you. I'm very well. Yourself?
I'm good, yes, I'm very good. I'm enjoying the event.
It's a great event.
Yes.
A lot of footfall, first time in a long time, right?
I know, and it's seeing actual people as well. It's crazy.
What do you do? Handshake, hug?
I don't know. Yeah, I just wave to people usually.
Safe bet.
Yeah, safe bet. So before we go on, Derren, we mustn't keep our viewers waiting any longer. Who are you and where have you come from?
Well, my name's Derren Powell. I lead Mastercard's business development effort for the UK and Ireland from a fintech and card issuance perspective. So I look for those fintechs or those technology companies who are maybe looking to launch and bring a card prop or a card proposition to market, and or perhaps don't know where to turn within the network and need some help and support in navigating what is often a really complex ecosystem within Mastercard. So I act as a bit of a connector.
Oh, it sounds like you're doing a lot of really busy work at the moment, surely, with Mastercard.
Lots of conversations, lots of relationship building, and it's super exciting, super diverse and super innovative. So very, very enjoyable. And
it's especially poignant at the moment, given, we've just, touch wood, come off the back of the pandemic, How in your view have you seen the pandemic shape paytech?
I think it shaped it massively, and I think what it's really done is accelerated the pace of evolution, ideation, and the time to change. I think we all talk a lot about the digital era, the digital age, and the drive to digital, and all things digital, but it's not necessarily, and neither should it always be, a pure digital first play, okay, or a digital only play, I should say. Digital first, absolutely. But I think what we've seen during the pandemic is a genuine acceleration and the number of niche entities and companies that are coming to market to solve a very particular problem. Rather than trying to be a one-to-all, they're actually looking at very specific needs or use cases or what needs addressing. And I think in the climate that we've seen, that we've all lived and worked through, in the last two years now, we're starting to see a real emergence of enablers, value-added services, and providers that add value to the wider ecosystem and value chain.
I think you're really bang on the money there, and you sort of started to delve into my next question is, how are innovators answering the call of the pandemic? How has that shaped how paytech is being changed?
It's a really interesting point. I think, first and foremost, people are genuinely listening to the customer, the consumer. That end user, what do they want? What are they looking for? What are the problems that need solving? And I think really understanding the problem and identifying a potential solution and understanding the value that partners of that wider value chain and ecosystem, so like Mastercard, for example, what are some of those assets? What are the capabilities that can be leveraged? What are some of the innovations that can be utilised? As a multi-rail organisation, what does that truly mean? And generally trying to bring some of that to life. So I think for me, one of the first and foremost things that really strikes and resonates as a result of the pandemic is how people are looking to utilise and partner, underpinned by purpose. And I think that's something we might touch on in a little while in terms of that whole purpose, community, impact, inclusion.
Well, let's just jump straight onto that purpose question. We've got it now, but I think you mentioned a lot about answering the calls of the consumer and how it's changing to include and please more people essentially. But how do you think the needs of the consumer have? From paytech, how has it changed because of the pandemic in the last 2 years?
I think one of the things it's also really identified is there is still a huge amount of work to do in the world, the inclusive economy. Whether it's bridging that digital divide, whether it's serving those that are marginalised or perhaps historically excluded, perhaps it's on the community basis. We're starting to see some fascinating work with some of our fintechs who are really targeting community-based or a community-based approach. So think, females in an ethnic minority community, as an example, Now that might mean, a very much a focus on Sharia and Muslim banking. It might not. It's not necessarily exclusive to that. It might be to entities that are really looking at, at the other end of the spectrum, a situation working in partnership with the Alzheimer's Society and looking at how card and a digital solution can help people live through such events, which obviously have significant consequence on the individual and wider families. So I personally think that whole drive on purpose is absolutely massive, and that's before we start talking about some of the community that we're now addressing, that younger population, some of the generations that I'm at the other end of the generation spectrum, but where ultimately I still have a deep appreciation and value on our planet, the future, the future economy, gamifying banking and payments for the youth generation, for example. I mean, the list goes on. So I think, the more we have purpose at the center of what we do, and whether that's purpose and impact for all things inclusion and inclusivity, whether it's from an acceptance matters perspective, whether that's gender, ethnic minority, LGBTQ+, etc. It's hugely broad, and I think fintech, paytech, and all things tech has a massive part to play in accelerating and supporting those communities right across the piece.
You're absolutely right. I mean, the use cases of paytech are so wide and so varied that it's almost trying to sort of boil it down to where it would be best applicable. And talking of the application of paytech, I would we mentioned a lot about the partnership between fintech and paytech, but where do you see paytech going outside of the fintech industry?
It's a really interesting point, and I guess I'm really lucky because I get to experience snippets right across that value chain. So yeah, we talk a lot about fintech today, and let's not forget, I mean, 4 or 5 years ago, people weren't really talking fintech, they were talking prepaid. And prepaid was very much that sort of, and it still is and still remains, that proof of concept, that marker, that get a product out there, scale it, show it, ideate it, evolve it, still very much there. But fintech wasn't really a term that long ago. So I think we're starting to see the emergence of insurtechs. You've talked about paytech. I think we've heard earlier on about regtech, some of those ones. But I think it's actually diversifying, pushing further out. Agri-tech could be interesting. Pharma tech, to name a couple. But I think there's so many industries now generally that are thinking maybe we're getting a little left behind, and that's looking outside of just our sector and banking in general, which are maybe the easy ones to identify with. Ultimately, wherever there's an application for technology and where technology can solve and support the solving of some complex solutions, ultimately you can put a tech on the end of anything, right? Or most things.
Absolutely. I mean, it's the possibilities are endless, really.
Sure.
But we'll have to reconvene in a year or two time, and
it's an interesting one to watch.
It is.
I guess from a personal perspective and from a Mastercard viewpoint, we've just got to ensure that whatever the tech is, it's associated with us. And my job is to ultimately secure it and win those entities onto the Mastercard network and brand.
Well, Derren, it was lovely to speak to you today. I really hope that you enjoy the rest of the event.
You too.
And thank you for taking the time to speak with me.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.